Most Western countries have been reorienting on high-intensity conflict, and France is no exception. Yes, the baguettes will continue until morale improves. They've cooked up a list of changes to their infantry regiments to make them more capable of meeting that threat by 2030. But what does that actually mean? First, adding direct and indirect firepower organic to the infantry, including new anti-tank weapons, mortars, and loitering munitions. Introducing specialized recon, drone, and electronic warfare units to implement lessons from Ukraine. And third, restructuring to pay the bills and integrate the new weaponry. And then you have the Scorpion program to modernize its fleet of combat vehicles. This video will include experimental changes to the Infantry Squad for those who hate my rectangle-based content. But before we get into the proposed changes, what's the status quo? French infantry regiments on the Au Contact or In Contact model of 2016 generally consisted of 7 active duty companies and additional reserve companies. These were the Command and Logistics Company, 5 combat companies, and a support company. But the regiment isn't really a combat echelon as such. It's kind of like a large battalion that generates only a portion of its assets to form the core of another battalion, a Combined Arms Tactical Group or GTIA. The lead regiment's command company would form the Tactical Group HQ and Logistics Trains or TC2. They'd normally have 1 to 3 of their own infantry companies, possibly with reinforcements from the support company, plus elements attached from other regiments, such as a cavalry squadron team, whether tank, recon, or wheeled gun, an engineer company, and an artillery observation and coordination detachment. Exact compositions depend on the situation, and they could receive additional reinforcements in the form of an artillery subgroup, logistics subgroup, or other specialties. But back to the regiment. The structure is basically the same regardless of unit, but they do use different vehicles. Going forward, the 2 armored brigades will have regiments on VBCI infantry fighting vehicles. The 2 medium brigades, which are France's amphibious capability, also each had 1 regiment with VBCIs, but these have transitioned to the new VBMR Griffin, a product of France's Scorpion program. 2nd Rima's last VBCI left in November of 2023, and the 2nd Foreign Infantry Regiment seems to be largely on Griffin now as well. Most other regiments in the 2 medium brigades and the Franco-German brigade were on the lighter VAB armored personnel carrier, but these will be replaced by the Griffin. In the mountain and airborne brigades, the VAB will be replaced by the lighter VBMR-L Serval, which is 4x4 instead of 6x6, but has the same passenger capacity. The mountain brigade specifically also uses the VHM, an articulated tracked carrier produced by BAE for rough terrain. Combat companies of the 2016 model, roughly 175-man formations, have a command platoon, 3 infantry platoons, and a support platoon. This overall structure won't change, but the internals will. The support platoon is meant to have a mortar squad with 2 81mm mortars and 2 direct support squads, each with a Milan anti-tank guided missile, or now the Acheron MP, and a 7.62 machine gun. Each squad could take out one or the other depending on the situation. Rifle platoons also have their own support squad with 2 teams that can either take out a shorter range Eryx ATGM or an FN Mag machine gun. But the Eryx is aging and has had to have its retirement postponed until 2026 due to the lack of a replacement. I'll address that later in the video. The support company, meanwhile, originally had a command platoon, a dismounted engagement support platoon with a special role that I'll explain in a little bit, a direct support platoon serving a mix of 4 Milan anti-tank guided missiles and 4 7.62 machine guns, and a sniper platoon with 8 PGM ACAT-2 50 cal anti-materiel rifles and DMRs like the HK-417 and new SCAR-H. So in terms of heavy weapons, the 2016 Infantry Regiment had per combat company 2 81mm mortars, 6 Eryx short-range ATGMs, and 2 Milan ATGMs, plus 4 Milans in the Regimental Support Company. I'll be covering the new anti-tank capabilities first, but to make sure later numbers aren't confusing, there's also a larger reorganization going on in the background. In the wake of Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the French army decided it needed more specialists within the infantry, electronic warfare, drones, and firepower. But to make that work, they need to make manpower cuts in other areas. About 1,500 personnel in total, or 75 people per regiment, would have to be freed up. So they decided to disband the 5th Combat Company, which was added in 2016 in response to the string of Islamist attacks in 2015. This leaves regiments with 4 combat companies, the support company, and the command and logistics company, plus reserves. With that context out of the way, the 70s vintage Milan has been replaced by the current creme de la creme of French anti-tank weapons, the Acheron MP. This is a medium-range ATGM capable of hitting targets in the ballpark of 4,000 meters and non-line of sight. The Milan, by contrast, had a range of about 1,900 meters with 95% chance to hit. The Acheron has both a fire and forget mode, increasing survivability of the shooter, as well as a man-in-the-loop mode that allows for interventions after launch, including lock-on after launch, retargeting, and launch abort. Like the Spike missile, the Acheron missile can be connected to the firing post by a fiber optic wire, which allows for intervention after launch with minimal risk of jamming. But the latest issue of Fantassins, referred to me by these gentlemen, notes that due to the cost of the new Acheron MP replacing the Milan, availability is currently low, more like 7 firing posts across the whole regiment, although they want to work up to 12, 2 per combat company and 4 in the support company. The shiniest anti-tank upgrade of the last month fills the gap. The old Eryx will be replaced by Saab's NLAW as an interim solution ahead of a longer-term French platform. The NLAW is a disposable, short-range fire-and-forget missile that uses predicted line of sight to reduce the chance of error when firing against a moving target. This also enables fire and forget with minimal complexity for the user. It has an overfly top attack setting in addition to direct attack, making it more reliable against tanks than the Eryx. It's capable of engaging targets between 20 and 800 meters. The NLAW is more economical than the Acheron, costing 60 to 100,000 euros according to Fantassins, as opposed to the roughly 200,000 euros each Acheron missile cost as per the 2019 budget. The short of it is, the NLAW fills a capability gap between the AT4 and Acheron in terms of range, kill probability against tanks, and cost. The NLAW is reasonably light and can be fired from the shoulder. In the British Army, it's even employed at the section level, so instead of having a centralized support squad with 2 Eryx, the French plan to distribute the NLAW to each of the 3 infantry squads, with a binome or buddy team serving 1. That would make for at least 9 NLAWs per combat company. The company's 2 direct support groups under the support platoon may also lose their 2 machine guns and become a single anti-tank squad, but they want to have 2 Acheron MPs, same as the Milan. At the tactical group level, the regimental support company's direct support platoon, which is currently 4 mixed ATGM and medium machine gun squads, may also become an exclusively anti-tank formation, a real sad sack type situation. This new anti-tank platoon may include a medium-range anti-tank squad with 2 Acheron missile teams, and 2 mixed squads with 1 Acheron and 1 NLAW each. Both squads will have 7 soldiers and be mounted on an armored carrier. The NLAWs will be able to economize the Acherons. If a BTR or something gets in close or is accompanying a tank, the NLAWs could be used for that lesser threat, saving the Acheron for the higher threat. The NLAW also has a shorter arming distance, 20 meters versus the Acheron's 150 meters, so if there's a close-in threat, the NLAW can save their bacon. Of course, the anti-tank platoons of ye olden days had 6 Milans instead of just 4, and I'm guessing they don't want to spend the treasure giving these platoons 6 Acherons. In total, the regiment would have 12 Acheron launchers and 38 NLAW operators. The NLAW will be complemented by new AT4 F2s, which will replace the original AT4 CS by 2027. The new AT4s will notably include improved anti-armor and anti-personnel munitions. The The anti-armor variant has a claimed range of 600 meters against moving targets, versus the original, which had a range of 300 meters against stationary targets and 200 meters against moving targets. This is enabled by Aimpoint's reusable fire control system sight, which will be paired with the disposable launchers. The anti-personnel HE version will include an airburst mode and have a max range of 600 meters using impact fusing or 1000 meters using the airburst. The AT-4F2 was actually meant to replace the Eryx before the NLAW decision, but honestly that always seemed like a little bit of cope given the AT-4 isn't viewed as a reliable tank killer. This NLAW stuff is a nice lead-in to the planned reorganization of French infantry squads. French squads currently consist of a squad leader, marksman with the SCAR HPR, an alpha team, formerly known as the 300-meter team with riflemen and AT-4s, a Bravo team, formerly known as the 600-meter team, with the Mini-Me light machine gun and an LGI 51mm grenade launcher, and a two-man vehicle crew. Because the teams are made up of 3 soldiers, they're also called trinômes or trinomes. Current experimentation points to the replacement of trinomes with binomes. I haven't seen a detailed explanation of this change, other than increasing fluidity, agility, and resilience. Your typical list of buzzwords. It's the same amount of guys, so I'm not sure how it increases resilience other than maybe allowing for greater dispersion, but I could see the flexibility angle. The trinome structure was introduced before squads had a marksman, so now with 8 dismounts, I could see the French moving to a system where they use 4-man fire teams in certain situations, or use the 2-man binomes. For example, house fighting lends itself to buddy teams. As far as weapons, the HK-416 is fully rolled out as the main service rifle. One binome will serve the NLAW as mentioned. The NLAW doesn't actually need a crew, so whether the second guy is actually carrying an extra round or just doing protection, I don't know. Another binome will include 2 AT-4s and a Lance Grenadier. It's ambiguous to me right now whether the new HK-269 40mm grenade launchers France has procured are meant to be a one-for-one replacement of the old light mortar-looking LGI. The third binome will serve a machine gun. It's possible that France will jointly procure the FN Evolus with the Belgians as a mini-me replacement in the future. Next-gen squad graphics are kind of assuming that's going to be the case. At the platoon level, current concepts call for disbanding the support squad, former holder of ATGMs, and combining it with the command group. This will resource a 2-man support team to operate mini drones. Graphics imply this binome will pull double duty as a medium machine gun team. Personally, I don't think that makes too much sense because manning a proper machine gun position is a very different job from piloting a drone with your head in a tablet. You'd probably get one or the other, and regardless, it's also a reduction of one machine gun at a time when the company and battalion level support units lose their medium machine gun capabilities. So in my unsolicited opinion, I feel like this needs refinement. Although, I suppose this could be mitigated if the 7.62 Evolus is the one they go with at the squad level, but putting a medium machine gun in squads directly presents its own trade-offs. Maybe that's why they want to give it its own binome. In addition to direct fire, the French plan on upgrading the infantry's indirect fire capabilities. The infantry's artillery, so to speak. In the 3 decades since the Cold War ended, artillery was one of the combat arms hardest hit by shifting priorities. Indirect fire is just generally not emphasized during counterinsurgency operations. In high-intensity operations though, well, some would argue it's mostly a matter of fires. About 20 years ago, French mechanized infantry regiments had 8 81mm mortars and 6 120mm mortars in their support companies. But today, 2 81mm mortars per company are the infantry's heaviest indirect fire assets. 120mm mortars and 155mm howitzers are employed by artillery regiments that can attach a battery team called SGTAs to support battalion-sized tactical groups. However, in a large-scale conflict, in many cases this heavier artillery will have a brigade or division-level mission, and a tactical group will not always have priority for brigade fires. So as to not deprive the battalion from fire support, they were forming the old mortar support platoons within the regimental support companies. These will include 4 120mm mortars, which will eventually be towed by several APCs. These will be split into 2 groups, each paired with a reconnaissance group with a drone capability. The platoon will have an HQ operating the Atlas artillery fire control system and a supply group. That'll include ammunition trucks for the company team and tactical group trains, and a Griffin ELI for frontline maintenance. The goal is for the first 8 infantry regiments to form their mortar platoon in summer of 2024, followed by 4 platoons per year from 2025 to 2027, and a final one in 2028. These new 120mm mortar platoons will be staffed by infantrymen under a new mortarman specialty. They'll be trained in part by the artillery branch, particularly in the Atlas fire control system. At the same time, artillery regiments will transition from the towed 120s to Griffin MPAC mortar carriers at the scale of 1 8-piece battery per regiment to provide more protection and mobility while reducing crew requirements. In addition to the heavier mortars, they also intend to have a binome within the rifle company's 81mm mortar squad qualified to operate short-range remotely operated munitions, or colloquially kamikaze drones. The French initiated 2 remote munitions projects in 2022. Colibri is intended as a short-range munition able to target light vehicles over an area up to 5 kilometers away with minimal bulk to allow for man-packing and minimal preparation to launch. This is probably the one that would be employed at the company level. The options are between an MBDA Novedem rotary wing UAS and a Nexter Delaire fixed-wing option. Novedem's NX-70 quadcopter has already been in French service, and they ordered an additional 260 in 2024. L'Arené, on the other hand, will be a medium-range munition that can neutralize armored vehicles over an area up to 50 kilometers from the launching point. A new type of formation will operate loitering munitions within infantry regiments, among other tech. Infantry Robotic Reconnaissance Platoons, or SRRIs, started to be added to infantry regiment support companies in 2022 when the 5th companies began to be dissolved. It seems these will transform into Intelligence and Electronic Warfare Platoons, or SRGEs, becoming a landing spot and a hub of expertise for drones, robotic autonomous systems, and electronic warfare capabilities. If you watched my video on the US Army's reorganization to its infantry, it's equivalent to the Battalion Robotic Autonomous Systems Platoon. The new platoon will be mounted on the VBL Scout Car's potential replacement, the VBAE. Although it's worth noting that this is only in its pre-design phase and won't be an in-service platform until around 2030. It'll include a headquarters with a command post and a human intelligence team. They'll lead 3 intelligence patrols, which will each have 6 soldiers and 2 scout cars. One could be armed with a 25mm remote weapon system. These patrols may operate a diversity of equipment, including mini drones for observation, loitering munitions, the NLAW, unmanned ground vehicles, and even a motorcycle for low-signature hit-and-run tactics. We've been seeing pictures of robotic recon platoons and the regimental commando platoons on exercise utilizing quad bikes, open-top Peugeot P4s, and even bicycles, so keeping it low-key is definitely the goal. Do a wheelie! The platoon will be rounded out with 2 electronic warfare squads, each with 2 scout cars. The purpose of the platoon will be to acquire intelligence on the enemy and deliver fires and non-kinetic effects. That could be observing the enemy with drones and directing a kamikaze drone or ATGM team on target. It could be electromagnetically locating the enemy, deceiving them with EM decoys, or jamming high-value targets like command posts or artillery. Integrating the SRGE's observation with the mortar platoon's firepower would be logical. Special attention is paid to the psychological impact of drones threatening the enemy at any time in their own backyard, which would be considered a non-kinetic effect. The 92nd Infantry Regiment is currently experimenting with how the SRGE and the Dismounted Engagement Support Platoon, or SAED, will work together. The latter is basically a sort of commando unit organic to the regiment, primarily intended to conduct actions behind enemy lines. Their special sauce is dismounted infiltrations just beyond the front line to gather intelligence and harass, neutralize, or seize certain objectives. Under Infantry Regiment 2030, they'd gain loitering munitions, unmanned ground vehicles, and drones as well. Instead of shutting down their 5th company completely, the 92nd is forming an experimental deep engagement company to play around with, a real penetration division of a name. They envision the company as being able to operate 6 to 8 kilometers ahead of the battalion with the ability to operate autonomously for 48 hours. They could fill maneuver support roles, such as seizing crossing points, hit and run actions, setting up ambushes, deceiving the enemy, reconnaissance and intelligence gathering, and putting psychological stress on the enemy. The company may eventually include the Dismounted Engagement Support Platoon, a Regimental Recon Platoon, and 2 platoons on VBCIs for combat power. Based on context, I'm guessing when they say Regimental Recon Platoon, they mean the Intel and EW platoon I just went over. If you want to learn more about how armies are modernizing, check out this video on the changes the US Army is making to its light infantry brigades. Basically this video, but for the US. I'll see you over there.